For today's review, I'm going to be talking about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. This is a classic from director George Roy Hill, starring two Hollywood icons, giants, legends, Paul Newman and Robert Redford, of course, playing Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. A story about the well-known and talked about bank robbers who didn't, but at least before this movie, didn't really get a lot of movies or stories about them. You know, more like Jesse James was like the bigger, more notable, whatever. So this kind of brought those two to light in their story. The funny thing about the movie is it's like what follows is mostly true. So you know, whatever. It's a very entertaining movie for the most part. I mean, it definitely drags in some areas, but really, what it is, I would say, it's more of like a buddy action comedy that happens to be a western than, say, a western that happens to be a buddy action comedy. And I think that's a real important distinction, because this doesn't really feel like a western, and I think for the most part it doesn't exactly mean to, like, I mean, in some cases it feels like a western, of course, but it's that's not what it's about. Basically, that's not its business. It does kind of take on this more modern feel, at least modern at the time. So it kind of establishes that through the opening scenes, where we see first the credits and then like the kind of film reel. Then we see the opening scene. Butch is scoping out a bank, and then he meets up with the Sundance playing cards. You know, he's being accused of cheating, and there's kind of the whole standoff there. That's all in this great, like, sepia tone kind of cinematography. The cinematography, of course, from Conrad Hall, a legend in and of himself in terms of cinematography. So with that, they're kind of like stepping out from the classic western to a more modern kind of feeling movie. So it's like they've evolved in some way, and definitely like just like the witty back and forth and banter feels very modern. Even like the music feels very modern. Burt Bacharach, of course, doing the score, feels like a 60s kind of score. And of course, the well-known song from the movie, that song won an Oscar, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. So there's that, you know, riding the bicycle with Catherine Ross. So that's all good. So it has the sensibilities of a modern movie, and not quite in the way, like, say, something like Bonnie and Clyde did. Bonnie and Clyde, I think, did a better job of that. This is more, I don't know, it doesn't quite want to take itself too seriously, which is fine. It wants to feel more like a fun buddy action movie, which it accomplishes greatly, in my opinion. And with these two leads, of course, I mean, just such great chemistry between the two, as if you need me to tell you that. And you know, most would say it's the definitive pairing of these two iconic actors, and you can see that right on the screen. There's just so much great rapport between the two actors, you know, from, you know, the very beginning in that standoff scene to the scene where they're, you know, the classic scene where they're gonna jump off the waterfall, to the very end where they kind of make their last stand. It's all great. They're buddies, and we root for them despite, you know, maybe some gray moral areas. But that's kind of the thing about these characters, is that we do like them, and we do think that they're well-meaning characters. They do kind of want to go straight, you know. They keep on talking about, well, let's join the army or whatever. Let's stop robbing banks. And you know, we find out a little bit. Maybe this is sort of a spoiler, but we find out that they've never actually killed anybody in their robbings, in their robberies or whatever. So that kind of makes them a lot easier to like. And one thing I'll say about the movie, and at least kind of its failings, is that I'd say the first half definitely is a lot better than the second half. The second half of the movie, it all kind of revolves around they go off to Bolivia, try to start new lives, but still rob banks, and they bring Catherine Ross, actress best known probably for The Graduate, you know, Elaine, and you're like thinking, are they like sharing her, or what's going on? But whatever. So that's them trying to start their lives there after being pursued by the law. So I don't know, it kind of drags in that area, but it does make up for it with a really, really good ending. Really great standoff at the end. But like the first half of the movie is so good because again we get like more sense of the characters. Like when they're robbing banks, it really does feel like a job to them, not like they're completely bad people or anything like that. So it feels like a job, and it's like, we have the scenes where they stop the train, and like the one guy is like holding out, is like, "I'm not opening this train. I was hired by. I'm not going to let him down because I'm a good blah 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 whatever." It's like, okay, man, we have dynamite here. You're gonna get like fucking dynamited if you don't open the door, and then he gets dynamited. But that was his choice. So it's like, to a reason, they have to be sort of diplomatic in certain ways. And then they run into him again, and it's really funny. And like they pretend like they're threatening an old lady, but they're not really. So it's funny stuff like that. So I loved those earlier scenes in kind of the Wild West atmosphere of it, where again it doesn't feel like a Western, if that makes any sense, but it's there, like it's there on the screen, and it's a beautiful looking movie. Again, Conrad Hall's cinematography is just wonderful, and this is kind of his first step into his legendary status that he would soon find himself in. So I mean, the movie's a classic for a reason, but I wouldn't say it's a great movie. It's a fun movie with two really lovable characters and actors portraying them. There's a lot of very entertaining moments, and I love the ending. I think the ending is really fantastic. But just because in some cases, just because it feels a little bit uneven, and like we have a first half of a movie that feels like absolutely where it should be, and a second half that kind of drags. It falls short of greatness, I think, but still, it's still being watched today, still being talked about. I think it's, in the IMDb top 50, 250 still, so that's for good reason. Definitely, if you want to get a taste of the magic that is Robert Redford and Paul Newman, or Paul Newman, Robert Redford, however you want to put their names on the poster, you definitely got to check this movie out. It's well worth your time. So that's my review of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, a classic. Plenty more 31 Days of Oscar reviews. I'm going to be talking about more movies that were nominated for and have won the Best Picture Academy Award. So stay tuned for more of that. Until next time, please comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff, and visit Derek237.com. And until next time, I'll see you later.